folks. Welcome back to another episode of the BoomBastiCAST, but not just any episode of the BoomBastiCAST, a quote unquote best of BoomBastiCAST. Last year, 2023, usually around the Thanksgiving time, we like to give thanks to the gracious guests that come on our show that we're able to sit down with for hours at a time and kind of collect great stories and great memories. You got anything to say, Hawkman, before we pop into some of these clips?
Other than that, it's been a wild ride, and right now we're in season 6, and
Right.
this is, of course, our season 5 guest, and we have gone so far from our humble beginnings. I mean, now we're getting a lot more subscribers. We're getting a lot more views per episode, and it
Thank y'all for that.
yeah, it makes us feel good that people are tuning in, people are liking what we're doing, and they're enjoying the content, enjoying listening to these people in the industry of all the trials and tribulations, and and it's always fun to look back and enjoy the people that we meet. Some hopefully we'll have back again. Others we might not. But the fact is that uh, it's just so much fun talking to these people, and everyone has a different story, and that's one thing about people who make it into the industry. No one has the same story. Everyone has a different way of how they got into acting, how they got involved in screenwriting or being an author or anything like that. Everyone has a unique story, and that's what we try to bring and tell people about the unique stories of these people.
True facts. You know, um, it has been a while. 6 years. We've the progression. We started just me and Alex right before COVID. I think it was. I think it was right
Yeah,
before.
I think it was like 2019 when we started doing BoomBastiCast. And I mean,
So
those
low.
early ones, it was just Matt and myself. We were talking about, pop culture, movies, TV. And then I think it was the third year in, we started bringing in guests. And then the rest is history.
That's true. Those first two seasons can be found on the Patreon page at Boombastic Streaming. For anybody that is out there with a little bit of change in their pocket and want to change our lives, man, change the better, change for the good. Go hit up the Patreon. Um, we got some exclusive first two seasons in there, and maybe some of the later seasons might be dipping off into there in the future. You had a chance to see them. Don't be angry with us. Don't be angry with us if that happens. Buddy Buttafuoco calls the shots, and every board meeting we have, he says paywall, paywall, paywall. We say no, buddy. We don't want to do that. We got the first two seasons behind the paywall. We don't want to start stretching the guests into the paywall, but you never know. Maybe Buddy might overcome. Maybe he might catch us in a financial way. I know we just shot a film, which whenever we go into it, our funds usually get pretty tapped up and tied up into that, because we're not money bags. We're handsome bags. That's what they say in the streets. But
Correct.
yeah, so kind of that's that. But like Alex was saying, the subscribers went up. The progression of the show. I remember at point when every episode was getting 100. I remember when things went to like the 500 mark. I remember when like things were at the 700 mark. You know what I mean? And right now we're at a part where the 1500. I remember how like much of an achievement it felt like, and it is. You always got to celebrate the small victories. Just crossing over that 1,000 mark. You know what I mean? And we couldn't have done it without y'all folks out there watching and listening. Um, it's a beautiful thing. We really appreciate everybody tuning in. The subscribers of like Alex said, the subscribers have gone up. We're getting a lot more likes. We're getting a lot more comments. We're getting a lot more views, and that's all yous. That's all yous guys out there. Yous guys and girls out there hooking it up and enjoying the show, and we really appreciate you. And this episode is our appreciation for you and our guests. So with that being said, prepare for thanks to be given. I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, all right. And with that being said, Alexander, what do we want to pop into first?
The first guest that we're going to talk about has, I mean, I don't want to say or be too full of ourselves, but I would like to consider him uh, a friend, Mr. Uwe Boll.
Yui's the man. Yes, sir.
This is the first time we had him on the show. Since then, he's has come back again, and there is talk about him coming back at least a third time to
Yeah,
talk about some other projects that he has in the works. And um, and the great thing is that the episode that we first did with him was unwarranted hate, um, and we really discussed about just how unfair and kind of petty that critics can be.
yeah.
And the fact is that, I mean, whether you like Uwe Boll films or you don't, everyone has opinion. That's fine. Everyone, I mean, he might not be everyone's cup of tea, but what we really went into was the fact that when you start doing films, and if you have, let's say, one or two films that don't do that well, people don't like, especially with the critics, they take that as a sign of weakness, and they just, no matter what you do, you could come out with Citizen Kane, and they'll like, no, this is shit. Uwe Boll can't do anything other than, these movies that we consider, that we don't like. And the thing is, go look at his IMDb. He's done so many films. I mean, my personal favorite is 1968 Tunnel Rats, The Attack on Darfur. Those two are really moving films. I really love those. And the fact is, if you're like, oh, he only does video game movies and all that, go check out those films, okay? And I mean, like I said, my humble opinion is that don't always judge a filmmaker on, his first few films, or, always give them a chance, because you never know. They could very well come out with a film that would surprise you.
For shizzle. Post still happens to be my favorite Uwe Boll film. I think it's one of the greatest dark comedies of the last like 20 years, maybe even more. I know right now, as we speak, he's currently looking for funds to do kind of a semi sequel to that. I believe it's called California Fried Movie, kind of a take on his first film, which was German Fried Movie, which was a take on Kentucky Fried Movie. Um, and yeah, dude, I think, Yui's a dude that um I knew we were gonna have a lot of fun the first time we sat down with Yui, because like we might be getting into here is how like him fighting the critics is always, it's always good times. I always appreciated that, because every filmmaker kind of would love to be able to take a shot at the people that take a shot at them. Um but sitting down with Yui, like it was kind of an eye opening thing even though our budgets are very much different, that he still goes through the same type of struggles that we do, even on a bigger budget. And that was what I think there was a bonding over that between the three of us. The fact that we're all still kind of we still have to claw and fight to get these films done, and it doesn't matter kind of what type of finances you're dealing with. And that's what I really had to grow it even more of an appreciation for him, seeing that he's still, you think, okay, he's had Hollywood films in theaters. I've seen these movies in theaters. We often talk about in an independent world of ours, like if we were to die, us, when we die, it's possible that our films don't live on if there's nobody to push them. But Yui's in that spectrum where his movies were so big that even when he's dead, they'll still be attainable and they'll be out there to get. You know what I mean? and he still struggles with just the difficulties of making film. And the fact that we were talking to a dude that's had millions of dollars to make films and still does, but still goes through the, the hard times of making a film. There's nothing more bonding than that. I think even if it's just, like I said, our budgets are two different worlds, but the fight's the same. You know what I mean? And that's what I really grew to. I had a way more appreciation towards Uwe for that, where he's still an independent dude who finds the money and goes outside the system to make his films. You know what I mean? And I have to give huge kudos to that. And much love to Uwe always. And yeah, he'll be on a lot more times. He's a good man. Talk to him quite often. And the new flick, you know what I mean? First Shift.
Yeah.
That should be streaming right about now. Me and Alex went to go check it out. It had a small theatrical run. It was playing up in the city. Me and Alex went and grabbed 2 seats to that bad motherfucker. And very cool flick.
I think now you can get on Google Plus. So
Cool.
if you don't want to trudge out to theater, go check it out. It's a lot of fun, and it shows that the independent spirit is still alive out there.
Support all. If you're a fan of our show, and we appreciate you support us, but support our guests too, because nobody has to come on our show. You know what I mean? They do it out of being cool people that are down to talk shop. You know what I mean? So I always have much respect for that, and I think our audience does too. And if they don't, give some respect for that shit, because definitely much love to everybody who's been on the show. But let's pop into that Uwe clip right quick and give them a little taste. And if this is the first time you're getting a taste of this episode, by all means pop into last season's episodes and give the full thing a watch. It was a really fun time, and Uwe's a really good dude, talented dude, and regular on the show. His words exactly. All right, and with that being said, Alex, roll that beautiful bean footage.
Because of House of the Dead, Alone in the Dark, I was so tainted at that point at the reviewers that they only, whatever I did, they just wanted to destroy.
Mm.
Yeah,
it's a tough deal, you know what I mean, for sure. The with the critics and stuff, where do you it's almost like they came to a turning point where they decided they're not going to be fans, and then they just, from that point on, they were kind of difficult with you. Did you remember the exact turning point with that, or when that really kind of came into play, where you had to worry about the fact that, and everybody goes, oh, just critics, you don't got to worry about them, but you do kind of got to worry about them when people go to them for advice on films and such. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was on Alone in the Dark.
Yeah.
That was the film. House of the Dead did good business, was campy, was gory, and it was a little mixed up. And Alone in the Dark was like the downfall, basically. They totally trashed it and said it was a piece of shit, whatever. And then they hated me. So whatever then happened, like Blood Rain, it didn't get any credit, credit, where you could say, okay, you know what, Blood Rain is totally different as Alone in the Dark, and In the Name of the King is totally different as Alone in the Dark and Blood Rain.
Yeah.
So, but they were not willing to judge the films individual anymore. They were just, oh, it's an Uwe Boll film, boom. It was like whatever happened, it got trashed. And I felt that the absurd thing with the raspberries, when I got the raspberry for my life achievement, whatever, was for Postal, what I think is a sensational film.
I love Postal.
Right? And then you get nominated. That showed to me they never watched Postal. It was just like the amalgamation of Ball films in the video game base. We have to give that guy the life achievement award, and not even watching Postal. When I do podcasts or talk to reviewers now, years and years later, most of them agree that Postal is actually maybe the best video game based movie ever made.
I think
you know,
so.
because it's so adequate to the chaotic anarchistic game as you can do it, you know. And I think also what didn't help me at that point was that all the really shitty, even more expensive video game based films like World of Warcraft or Prince of Persia were at that point not existing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I couldn't compare it to them and say, look, they spent triple of what I spent on In the Name of the King, and I have bigger cast and a better film. So for what they're spending all that money. So, and that is the thing. It's like that came too late. It came too late, and then people were like focused on their opinion and continue with that opinion. And I mean, you are watching films like me. I'm a film freak. I watch everything. And I think there are a lot of reversed director careers where you have people that did one or two good films in the beginning, and then they basically totally flatted out and made only crap. And they're still getting celebrated as the total geniuses. And you watch the film yourself and you think, what the fuck, this guy like Terrence Malick or whatever, where you think like, what the fuck is wrong? It's just scheiße, it's total bullshit what that guy filmed for like the last 10, 12 years. And before The Thin Red Line, Badlands, whatever, he did good films, you know, but this guy's getting like the pass on whatever they shoot, and nobody rips them to or Paul Thomas Anderson. You know, There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights, masterpieces. You know, and then you have like The Master or whatever. Like some movies that were so bad, like The Phantom Menace that was Daniel Day-Lewis, horrible. You know, and you think like, but they never got. They even got Oscar nominations for that films. Where a normal viewer looks at this and say, no, it's total crap. If I would did The Phantom Thread or whatever the film was with Daniel Day-Lewis, they would completely demolish that film into the ground. And in my case, I started on the wrong foot, and I could do whatever I wanted. I never got the credit back.
You know, I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And Paul Thomas Anderson is like a really good example of that, because you got like Boogie Nights, you've got Hard Eight, you've got, you know, There Will Be Blood. I like The Master, but after The Master, like that incoherent Vice movie was no good. Phantom Thread was no good. And even the Licorice Pizza movie that everybody is loving, I watched it the other day and I'm like, it's very disappointing how far he fell, but they'll always show him respect. You know what I mean? It's it's definitely a weird vibe for sure.
I mean, it's kind of like, it kind of reminds me back in school where you have someone who, like, in the beginning, you know, gets all A's and all that, and then, you know, afterwards they throw in shit work and not working, and then, but they're still getting the accolades, they're still getting the grades, and then you have someone who, you know, didn't do such great at the beginning, and then even though he's getting better and he's doing better stuff, then, you know, the guy who used to get A's, he's not given the respect that he deserves for, you know, trying to improve himself and be better. I mean, the thing is that I think it's more of a journey for like actors, for directors and all that, and for artists in general, is it's all the journey that you can start off and maybe something isn't as good as you want or hoped. But when you go down, you know, years down the line, that, you know, you learn from your mistakes and you improve upon it. I mean, I've seen a lot of your stuff, like 1968 Tunnel Rats. I love that movie. I think it's one of the best war movies I've seen, that really kind of just encapsulates the, you know, the meaningless of war, in my opinion.
No, I 100% agree, and I think over the years I did 34 films, and I'm still self-critical. I know where flaws were, where things didn't work out, where the pressure was different, where you had to shoot even if the script was not finished. Stuff like this is also what people, they dig a little filmmaking, they know that there's sometimes stuff what is not transparent to the audience, what forces you to do stuff, because otherwise the project falls apart.
Yeah.
You know, where you say, where the actor says, I can do it, but we have to start shooting in 3 weeks. And, you know, and you have financiers, they say, you need to do that this year. Otherwise, I'm not backing you. And so, and then you run after time and you prep too fast and you, and the stuff is not full developed. And I see that mistakes, but that is the film industry. And not everybody is like Steven Spielberg, right? The way you can do whatever the fuck you want,
Right.
you know, and you still will get the actors when you want to shoot, and when after 4 years the script is ready. So, and that is, but it's not the reality of 99% of the filmmakers.
Yeah.
It's things falling apart, or you have things like say, look, we need to do this. We have a slot for that film, but only if you're quick, whatever. And that is, I think that is stuff what the normal audience don't know, but what also a lot of reviewers don't know, and where they also don't care. But I think the school stuff, what you said, was the best example, because let's say you have a guy who's doing only A's, right? If he really goes on a D level, the teacher thinks he is wrong. So he gives him a B minus for a D work. But the guy who had a C to start with will never get the A.
Yeah.
You know, no matter what you would do, they say, look, I judged that guy. I said he's not so good. I've wrote it in 2 reviews. I cannot say I was in total error with Tunnel Rats, you know, or Sold on Wall Street or Rampage, you know, to say, look, I was actually wrong. That thing is good. And I had only in US with Art Edinger, he had like a horror magazine from New York. He wrote, I think that was during Postal or whatever, a big article about me. And he wrote like, he is one of the totally misjudged directors of all time. He wrote, you barely had it, that somebody got so much hate, but half of his movies are extremely good and important. And in Germany, I had a situation in the bigger newspaper, The Welt, what would be like the Washington Post, whatever, like this kind of size in Germany, where a guy called me, also unusual, because in Germany I got bashed the whole time too. And then the guy called me and said during the lockdown, he watched all 33 at that point Boll films. And I asked him, like, you're kidding, right? I said, like, you're totally like lying to me, you know? And he said, no. He said, I watched all the Boll films from German Fright Movie on, and I want to write a whole page in that newspaper about you. And he was a very, let's say, the article was very, let's say, realistic. He hated Alone in the Dark. He hated Blood Rain, as an example, right? But he said Rampage 1 is for him one of the best films he watched at all. He said it's in his top 10 of all times, because nobody ever did a movie like this.
Right.
It was so ruthless, so sarcastic, so brutal. And he said no studio would ever do this, because they would think like, are you insane? You're celebrating a mass murderer, right? So, but I think that made the film.
Yeah.
That you like Bill Williams. You know, that is the thing, that and similar to Natural Born Killers, you know, where you had this kind of like, you loved the ride.
Right.
You know, so, and there are rarely films like this, they are like unmoral, but I think you get it where it's coming from. And so he wrote like that was one of them. He loved Darfur, he loved Tunnel Rats, and he said you really cannot just flatten out over Boll's career like so many directors that did 5 films and disappeared, or 3 films and disappeared. He said that guy made over 30 films.
Yeah.
So you cannot just act like he's a nobody who didn't get anything achieved, right? And it was, for me in Germany, a very important article, because a lot of other reviewers reading this, not watching my films then, but they at least read it and saw that at least one guy put the hours in and watched the films.
All right, that was some fun time with Yui for sure, man. I gotta say, like going out there on a limb, like it's very easy to talk about the highs of a career, but to talk about to be open enough to talk about the lows, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And to kind of be able to pinpoint where he kind of fell out of favor with like the bigger mainstream swing of things. It's more of that stuff, like I said, just relatable stuff, you know what I mean? Eye-opening, you know what I mean? Um, it's a crit like I talked about it often in this episode, in the full episode, and often talk about, you know, when I first started filmmaking, I was like, as long as you continue to continue to make good films and continue just to do it and be your perseverance, like you'll eventually get it. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that, so it doesn't get depressing. But next up, next up is the great Marc Sheffler, of course, comedian, stand-up comedian from the Comedy Store and all types of cool stuff like that. And most notably, probably for Junior and Last House on the Left, which is a masterpiece of horror. Wes Craven's first film. Wes Craven went to school for psychology, so like he quit that to become a film director. So that's why his films always have a little extra unnerving vibe to it, a little, it gets under your skin a lot. And Last House on the Left is definitely one of it's the when people throw around, I always bring this up with Last House on the Left, when people bring up dangerous films, the the two films I always bring up is A Clockwork Orange and Last House on the Left, because these films are movies that I feel like if an unstable mind watches enough, they might do something crazy. Now you can say that's a bad thing, you can say that's a good thing. For this conversation, we'll say that's a good thing. But Last House on the Left is like it's like a revenge. It's the family dynamic is attacked. So I think everybody can relate to that, whether you have kids or not. And you just and the villains are real seedy, almost despicable people, you know what I mean? So it just gets right under your skin. And there's scenes of just violence that are like raw, and like at the same time the soundtrack's playing like almost happy hippie music, and it's just like it's such a mind fuck because your eyes are seeing horror, your ears are hearing happiness, and it just does something. There's something about that has always been super effective, you know what I mean? So what do you got, what do you want to say about Mark before we pop in? Mark's a great dude too. I love
Oh
seeing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was great talking to him. I mean, it's interesting because I mean, we all know him from, of course, Last House on the Left, and of course, you know, his main career has been comedy. He does stand-up
Yeah.
comedy, and he's really good at it, and it's a lot of fun watching him. But again, going with you know, in this clip, we talked about, you know, dangerous movies and what Last House on the Left, you know, was, how it was reacted when it came out. And the fact is, I mean, going back with what we said with Yui and now with Mark, is that when there are movies out there that don't, I mean, you can't just sit back and say, oh, they're, you know, they're just popcorn entertainment and all that. There's movies that are in this case dangerous, or movies that people just don't like because they don't like your spin on it, whether it's not politically correct, whether it's, you know, not following what they believe should be shown in a film. and and the fact is, making movies is art. Okay, you go, and true art forces people to deal with issues and confront things, and that's what Last House on the Left was.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is, as Matt said, a total mind screw. Okay, with, you know, you see horrendous, horrific acts with this hippie, you know, happy-go-lucky music.
Yeah.
and and the fact is that that's why in this clip we even talked about that it was was actually put up in a museum. It was among, and I think Clockwork Orange also was another one that was considered a dangerous movie, dangerous art, and they put it up there because it has to be recognized, and the way that we as people look at things, how we digest art, and film is art. And if you don't do film that pushes the envelope, is it really art or is it just lip service?
For sure.
Yep.
So with that being said, let's pop into our clip of the great Marc Sheffler talking about all the above. Whenever in conversation, people throw around the term like dangerous films a lot, and I say there's really only two dangerous films in my opinion. It's of course Last House on the Left and A Clockwork Orange. You know what I mean? Because those two films, I feel like if the wrong person watch them too much, something bad might happen. They're that kind of crazy, but they're masterful filmmaking. You know what I mean? Like Wes Craven was going to school to be a psychologist, so like the psychological horror is heavy in Last House.
I'll tell you some interesting news about Last House.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't know if you guys know this, but the money to make Last House came from Boston.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a company called Hallmark Releasing funded it. They used to own a bunch of drive-ins in the area. So I told you guys that I was out of the country. I was in a little town right outside of Bogota, Colombia for 10 weeks at my wife's family's place. So I get a Facebook message from a friend of mine with a link to an upcoming exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So I click on the link, and it's a page that's promoting a cinema exhibition that they're doing about films that have a visceral effect on the human body, right? That not only get you psychologically, but make you have physical reactions. They were screening 6 films from all over the world in all eras. And one of them was Last House on the Left.
For sure.
I showed it to my wife and I said, "Don't fuck with me anymore. I'm now art."
Yeah.
And she said, "Okay, I will put a frame around your ass and hang you in the living room." No, but so I say this to you because it's 50 years later, because it just had the 50th anniversary, right? In August, the release. David Hess, Fred Lincoln, and I, and the rest of the cast and crew saw it at a cast and crew screening about a month before it was going to be released originally, back then. And David and Freddie and I walked out of the screening, looked at each other, and basically said, it was great. We all met. We're going to be friends forever, and we were, right? But no one's ever going to come and see this piece of shit. And it got released. I'll tell you, Sean I think made originally like 30 prints or something, some ridiculously low number. And he gave them to Hallmark, and Hallmark started showing them in their drive-ins, right?
Yeah.
And they had some, equation where if they made this movie for X amount of dollars, if they showed it in their movie, and they had their own, they were self-distributing, so they could get their money back, right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, like Roger Ebert, like a little after the film is released, Roger Ebert writes a 3.5 out of 4-star review in the Chicago Sun-Times about Last House. And the next day I walk into Sean's office and he's running around like a lunatic trying to figure out where he's going to get 1,000 prints that he has to deliver in like 3 days or something. And that's what did it. It was Roger Ebert's review of the film that took it out of the drive-ins and put it into mainstream theaters. I mean, posters of us were just suddenly papered all over New York City. Yeah, David Hess couldn't go anywhere without people staring at him.
Yeah.
And I was right there with him, so it was trippy times, man. It was trippy times.
All right, welcome back. That was a lot of fun with Marc Sheffler, you know what I mean, killing it. Next up on the docket, an episode that I was like super fucking stoked. I'll say stoked like the skateboarders and surfers say. Super stoked to get. Kevin Eastman up in here, you know what I mean? Co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Heavy Metal magazine. I tell you, you know, a lifelong fan of the Ninja Turtles, lifelong fan. It was definitely an honor and a privilege. All of our guests, it's an honor to get them, but my mind was kind of blown when I found out we were going to be able to talk to Kevin. And yeah, dude, it's like legendary status. To this day, probably one. I love all the guests, but to this day, probably one of my favorite guests. And still kind of like in wow that we got him just because the magnitude of the influence of his creation. You know, you talk about Ninja Turtles is from our everybody loved it. And it's one of those things that's generational. You know what I mean? Every not even 10 years, there's going to be a new version of it for the youth. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. It's never going to go away. We don't ever want it to go away. I still, every time there's maybe some of the TV shows I didn't quite check out, but every movie, like the graphic novels and stuff, whenever something, action figures, whenever new Ninja Turtle stuff comes out, sign me up, dude. I'm always on board. You know what I mean? And speaking of action figures, we're going to talk about, you know, some of his favorite things that kind of came from his creations within the show. I know we're going to talk about this guy right here, Casey Jones, doing a big style. He's staring at y'all out there. He's saying, yo, you better like this clip and you better go back and watch the full episode or I'm going to bat you up. You want to say anything else before we pop out into this one, my friend?
Yeah, sure. I mean, going with what Matt said, I mean, both of us are huge Ninja Turtle fans. And it was interesting seeing him, you know, talking about, you know, for example, the creation of the Casey Jones mask, in different, whether it's TV, in the movies, or in actual, like, figurine, like Matt just showed there. And it's always interesting, especially when you are responsible for creating something that people love. And we've had people that have created things and people take them and they do their own thing with them, and it never ends up looking exactly like what the original concept was.
Yeah.
And it was interesting talking to Kevin because, I mean, Kevin and Peter Laird, who was the other guy who did Ninja Turtles with him. Uh, I mean, they started out. It was a black and white comic book. They didn't even have the different color headbands between the
Right.
turtles. And then, of course, you know, it became popular, and then, of course, the different headbands were created, so you could tell each character apart. They built up the characteristics, and I have to say, it's one of the few things where, I mean, talking to the creator himself, that he's happy with how it progressed. There's a lot of people who they create something and then they see people take it over and like, I don't like this. This is going in a whole different direction.
Right.
But Kevin, I mean, he not only loves how Ninja Turtles became as big as they are and how they grew and improved and from his and Peter's original concept, but he also loves the fans, and that's another thing that I think we have to give him a high five for, because sometimes people get a little jaded with the fans, and not Kevin. Kevin enjoys talking to them and enjoys talking about his creation.
Yeah, like I think I say in the interview at some point, it's like if you I'm not gonna blow up anybody's spot or anything because I don't know how long if he still does it or not, but I do know that if you're going to a comic book convention and Kevin is there, definitely pop in and see him because there's like Alex said, there's few people in the world of entertainment You know what I mean? Not just comic books, but in the world of entertainment that I feel are as cool to his fans as he is, or rather the fans, because of course he's going to be the coolest to his fans than anybody else would be.
Yeah.
But he's a dude that, when I think of people that was, I think of Kevin Eastman. I think of Marilyn Burns from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think of Sid Haig from like everything, and like mostly probably known for this generation as Captain Spaulding, in the Rob Zombie in House with Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects and Three from Hell and such. But like those are the three people that I think of. I've personally witnessed them be super cool. Super. You see people being cool to their fans, but those three people I always have to say super cool, super cool. And rest in peace to Marilyn and Sid because they're no longer with us. But Kevin Eastman is the surviving super cool person at the convention circuit. And with that being said, let's kind of pop in and y'all can see why Kevin's so super cool on the BoomBastiCAST.
Since there was so many toys and accessories created based on the Ninja Turtles, was there anything that was created either from an idea that you had or something that someone else came up that you thought was extremely interesting or you really liked or you thought it was a cool idea or something?
Well, I'd say I point to I think one of the things about Turtles movie 1 especially was, for example, this goes kudos to Steve Barron and his attention to detail was Casey Jones as a character. Not only casting Elias Koteas, who was perfect, but instead of just getting an off-the-shelf hockey mask and distressing it or whatever to fit, he had one built that looked like straight from our comics. That design with the 3 slots and it was right out of our comic. And that was that kind of attention to detail and specific characterization of that character that he brought to life that would always be one of my favorite moments because it was he's the man. And I love that it's one of those things that a toy company called NECA Toys, who does these really brilliant adaptations of the Turtles from the movies and the cartoon show.
Yeah.
They're killer. Yeah, they did a recreation of Splinter's mask.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Casey's mask. So
Casey's
you could
mask.
actually buy the mask, that was designed right from the movie, much like Steve Barron designed it, much like right from the comic. So yeah, that was I would say that was that was a highlight for me. And yeah.
Was Jason Voorhees an influence on that Casey Jones mask at all?
It was not really, and I don't want to take away because I'm a fan of those movies, but it was just but to me it was the creation of Casey Jones as a character, because he's a total homespun vigilante style character, but we kind of made fun of him a little bit, at least in the original comic, where he wasn't created out of a series of really painful memories or circumstances, whereas like Batman, his family was murdered and this, so he became a vigilante.
Yeah.
Casey became a vigilante from watching too much bad TV. In fact, in the first comic, he's got 3 TVs going on at the same time, and there's like A-Team and TJ Hooker and something else on. And so the pieces of his costume came from found objects, which was, he was a hockey player. And so, but we wanted his unique mask because he had to keep his, as a vigilante, you have to keep your secret identity. So he had sweats and a shirt and a golf bag with a bunch of miscellaneous weapons, from a cricket bat to a hockey stick to baseball bats, golf clubs. So it was more just that came together from cobbling together what somebody like him would find and make his own vigilante costume from.
Accessories, bringing up accessories and action figures for me, Bebop and Rocksteady were classic. The turtles are really cool. I remember the turtles where you'd push down on their head. I remember, and their head would pop up and their head would spin and their shell would open up. You could put weapons in their shell.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a cool thing.
So many cool toys, and it's still going now. Like I said, like I had I showed earlier, the van. I love the van. You know what I mean? Krang had the Krang body was great. I know they just re-released that. They did the Slash re-release now, which I talked about earlier, which is really cool. But yeah, Ninja Turtles is like, if I was rich, I'd have a lot more Ninja Turtle stuff. All right, folks. Kevin's a great dude, man. Off into another great dude. Another dude who's kind of linked to some comics. The Tales from the Crypt comics, which is when I first started getting into comics, those were the ones that I was big into trying to get my hands on. I remember like talks of somebody seeing some Tales from the Crypt comics were like, phew, like Sasquatch shit. You know what I mean? You could never see them. They later repressed them. I remember there was a dude that I went to school with that told me his father had like the entire set of Tales from the Crypt comics. And I'm not a thief. I am not a thief. But if ever I was to be one, that's what I probably would have went for. Because I remember being so jealous of that. And I brought it up every time I talked to him in hopes that he'd be like, yeah, I told my dad about some kid like being in love with the idea that he had these comics and his dad being like, well, he can have them. You know what I mean? Like that was my fantasy. I wasn't fantasizing about girls. I was fantasizing about getting them Tales from the Crypt comics. And mainly because of the show, you know what I mean? Tales from the Crypt, the TV show, being a horror fan, and you had the Twilight Zone and stuff like that, but like the Tales from the Crypt show was probably one of the best batches of horror that you could get across your eyelids at a pretty young age. I had to kind of sneak horror movies when I was really young because it wasn't nobody really in my immediate family dug them. Like when we went to the rental store, we'd rent action movies, we'd rent comedies, kids movies, horror movies were never. I'd have to go to Nanu's house to rent movies when I'd go over there. And to be fair, I'd watch them with my uncles. Nanu would be the only person that would let me rent wrestling movies, wrestling events, Royal Rumbles and stuff like that. That was another thing that was a waste of money in the immediate household. They weren't a fan. They let me get a couple pay-per-views though, so much love for that. But yeah, we got John Kassir, the great John Kassir, been in a whole bunch of things. Probably, maybe most notably for playing the voice of the Crypt Keeper. A great voiceover artist, incredible for real. Super nice dude, very nice, cool dude. We've met him he's come to Rock and Shock a few times before Rock and Shock died. Met him in person, just always a friendly, super cool dude. And again, all the guests, it's an honor and a privilege to have him on. But it was really fun sitting down with John and being able to talk about kind of how the Crypt Keeper job kind of came into his life. And he's always, he'll talk about how he's always a big fan of the comics and just kind of how the opportunity come up. Do you want to say anything before we jump in, Hawkman, or?
Yeah. I really like John Kassir. Of course, in this clip, we're going to talk about, the role he's most known for, which is the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah.
But I do think that a little taste that you will not see in the clip that might convince you to see the full episode is that he also played Shep Howard in the Three Stooges film. Now, this was a made-for-TV film, okay? It's not the one that was the big budget one that came out, I don't know, like over 10 years ago or something like
Did
that.
the Farley brothers do that or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
There's
But
there's also a cool Stooge movie called Stooge Mania with a dude. I forget the actor's name. He plays like a goofball character a lot, but he plays a dude who's just like a super Stooge fan, and like it's some weird thing where like reality mixes with like the Stooges. So like he
yeah,
plays the Stooges.
I think they use maybe some like old clips and they like intercut or something like that.
I remember I have it on VHS, but I remember it's something about like the Stooges almost come into his reality or something like that. But I could be wrong. I own the movie. I haven't watched it probably 15 years, maybe more. But sorry.
But anyway, we end up talking about that in the full episode, and it was interesting. I didn't even know this, but actually Mel Gibson was a big executive producer on that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's done a lot of stuff. He's done a lot of TV. He's done a lot of voiceover work. But I mean, we're always going to remember as the Crypt Keeper, and he's a lot of fun. So I definitely say check this out.
Working for HBO, they invited me down to, they knew I did all these voices and characters in my act and said, "Oh, you'd be perfect to come audition for Tales from the Crypt." And I'm like, "What? I loved those comic books as a kid."
Yeah.
I used to have to hide them from my parents. They were so, as you guys know, controversial.
Yeah.
What do you guys remember about the Tales from the Crypt comic books, or what do you know about them? Basically, did you guys have any, an idea of the background of those?
I mean, I get a slight. I know of it, of course, because of the TV show. Big fan of the TV show. I've bought like a good amount of like the represses. You know what I mean? Just to have. They're nice to flip through. You know what I mean? It's a good vibe. But I've seen the like the mini docs on it and stuff like that. I don't have a,
Yeah, there's a great, if you have the DVD box set, the first season of Tales from the Crypt on DVDs, they have a Behind the Screams DVD that goes on about the how it went from comic book to movies to TV shows back to movies, and and how controversial those comic books were. In fact, there are age codes on comic books because of those EC comics.
Yeah.
Now, but they were like, "Oh, cause juvenile delinquency." I mean, it was as big as MAD, Moms Against Drunks. I mean, it was huge. They went, they were petitioning Congress to get rid of them. Of course, there were other people who are like, "Are you kidding me? Your kid's reading, for Christ's sake." It's like you won't read anything else, but he's learning to read. It may be fun, gross things, but the kid gets it. It's not like he's like, become an interior designer and everybody's
Right.
house is going to look like a cave.
Yeah.
It's just like, come on, what is wrong with you people? So, luckily it survived. Well, it survived to a point because what Bill Gaines, who early on in our process I got to meet a number of times, was wonderful to work with. Was having such success with a lot of other things, including Mad Magazine, that they kind of let these comic books go to the wayside because I guess they didn't need the negative press anymore. But there's the show, here it was being an opportunity to audition for it, and I'm sitting there thinking, this is just going to be for kids that grew up with the comic books like me. It's not going to be, HBO really wasn't in every household yet. It was,
Right.
You had to either steal the box or buy the cable or go see it at a neighbor's, kind of thing.
Yep.
And so I didn't think it would be such a big thing, but I was excited to go down to Kevin Yeager's studio, who had made Chucky and had designed
Right.
Freddy Krueger's look, and did all these, the creature maker and special effects artist, who is just at the top of his game, and has remained at the top of his game his entire career. And so I got to go into Kevin's studio, and I couldn't believe it. It was great. And there he was making this guy, you're working on this puppet, and he had different versions of them. One of them had a nose, one of them didn't have a nose. I mean, he had, a bunch of different stuff he was working on. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what he looks like, and I know what the show was supposed to be. And I could see, these other actors they had a casting director who was screening people first, to see if they had something that she thought Kevin would be interested in. And I could see them in the room going, be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
Oh, this is terrible. I'm sitting there going, nah, you don't get it. This is Shakespeare to this guy. I'm thinking to myself, and I remembered how great it was to watch Alfred Hitchcock introduce his episodes on Hitchcock Presents, and how dry and raised eyebrow he was, and I'm like, this is who this guy is, and because of his physicality and the holes in his throat, and I even threw in my Wicked Witch laugh. I mean, it's just like I was like, this guy's, you could do everything with this guy. It's not just the idea that he's a creepy host, but he could imitate John Wayne. I mean, he could do whatever. So I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to put all my own stand-up skills into the character. And as soon as I started doing it for Kevin, he was like, you could tell he had been sitting there all day, listening to the stuff that just wasn't working.
Yeah.
And he just went, start going like, go, 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 go. He starts laughing. I start laughing. I'm like, oh, great. The Crypt Keeper laughs at his own jokes. And I just keep doing it for him. Next day he had me doing it for Joel Silver and Dick Donner, two of the biggest guys in the business,
Yeah.
in their office. Well, actually it was in like a trailer, off the set where they were working on Tales from the Crypt on on what was a small budget for a regular TV series, but coming from HBO at that time.
It's big. It's big. It has a very cinematic, big feel to it. The show does. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they put all the money into the production. Nobody really got paid what they should have got paid, but they had great people because I mean, they had access to whoever they wanted as big producers as they were. And the producers on the show were Joel Silver, Richard Donner, Walter Hill, Bob Zemeckis, and David Giler, who was who produced Alien.
Yeah.
Of course, who Walter Hill is, a big director, producer, Dreamscape and 48 Hours, and I mean, Warriors, come out to play. I actually got to do a show off Broadway with David Patrick Kelly, called The Glorious Ones at Lincoln Center, and we had an amazing time. What a talent that guy is!
Yeah.
But he's so good at the creepiest characters, but he's a trip. He's a real talent.
Crypt Keeper laugh. Horrible impression of the Crypt Keeper. Like I say in the episode, I'm more of a fan of his work. You know what I'm saying? But next up we have the great John Billingsley. You know what I mean? Super cool dude. I know that in the beginning, before the cameras even started rolling, we were commenting back and forth on how we're both almost have like hoarder collections going. I know he's a big fan of books, and he has a gigantor library. And I'm always trying to build out my book library to be gigantor as well. I know this was a gentleman that Alex brought into the fray. You know what I mean? And John was a lot of fun, man. I really liked him. But, it was I wasn't super hip to his stuff popping into it. I did my research and stuff. The great Alexander the Hawk grabbed this episode. And Alex, I know I was a fan, but you were a bigger fan than I was before leading into it. I think we're equally big fans of him now. But give a little background on your John Billingsley love.
Well, I mean, John Billingsley is a great character actor. I've watched a lot of the stuff that he's been in. I mean, he played Flux in Enterprise. He's been in like the series Cold Case as a 2-episode arc reoccurring character that was really chilling. He was in True Blood. Yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff, and also he's been in a series that unfortunately did not last a full season called The Nine, about a bank robbery. I love that, and I have to say I was really upset when that that TV series didn't reach its full potential. But John was great in that.
Yeah.
But we're going to be talking about the movie Out of Time, with John Billingsley and the great Denzel Washington.
Sure.
And it is a fun movie. It is a bit of a film noir type. And what I mean, we're going to, of course, talk about it in the clip.
Yeah.
But what I loved most of all was the back and forth between John and Denzel. They really worked well together. And honestly, the movie probably would not have stayed on my radar for as long as it has if it wasn't for John. I mean, I love Denzel. Denzel did a great job. You had Eva Mendes, you had Dean Cain, you had a lot of great actors in it. But John, John brought in the comedy. John brought in the style, and I will always remember that movie because of John, pretty much.
For
So
sure.
I say this go in and watch the clip.
No, Out of Time was good. I thought
Yeah.
Out of Time was good, and unfortunately, because the nature of the film industry is such as it is, it was not released at a good time. You know, the fall these days is kind of the dead zone. After kids go to school, no more summer blockbusters before the Oscar movies, so they didn't really know what to do with this wonderful kind of B noir picture that was very stylishly made, but was still a summer escapist entertainment movie. So they kind of aired it in October. It disappeared at the box office, and it's too bad because I thought it was very beguiling and exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's great because
Those who haven't seen it: Denzel Washington, Eva Mendes, Saina Lathan,
Dean Cain.
Dean Cain, and yours truly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have to
Not
say,
necessarily in that order, mind you. Not how I would bill them. John Billingsley in Out of Time with and Denzel Washington.
but I mean, you do have to say that I think the scenes with you and Denzel, especially like at the end when you guys do that whole stick of like you gave me the wrong address and all of that, I thought that was by far one of the funniest and best scenes in that movie. It's great.
Carl is a wonderful, wonderful director and was very open, and it was a young writer who actually had written the script, so he as well was open to a fair amount of improvisation. You never know when you're going to get cast in a project, whether or not they're going to be sticklers for stick with the script, or they're going to give you some latitude. I love it when I get a little latitude because I can usually find a way to make sure I'm staying within the boundaries of the scene and still, kind of elbow some of the moments out. And he was game, and Denzel was game, and so for me, that was kind of a rare and wonderful experience. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Denzel, one of the best of his times, people would say. How is Denzel to work with an actor as an actor and like that type of platform?
As an actor, he's amazing. I mean, he's completely present in every moment. He's very playful. He's a great listener. He's obviously got the chops to go in any direction in any way. He's got the ferocity to suddenly scare the fuck out of you, and the tenderness, actually kind of lead you to believe you could be your best pal. As a guy, I mean, the reality is that when you're working with the A's, the stars, they've got a very, very they've got an enclave around them, and to a certain extent, you understand why they do. So I didn't, and I can't say that I felt like I got to know him at all. I mean, that was not on.
Right,
So
right.
I can't speak to him except in a professional way.
All right. Yeah, that was a lot of fun with John. We'll have to get him back on the show. That was good stuff. Next up, we're talking about comics quite a bit thus far. You know what I mean? I know that me and Alex were together yesterday at a comic book shop, New England Comics, Quincy edition. Shout out to them. Give us some free comics. And I know you were looking for the American Splendor graphic novel, which I have one up here behind me. My thumb's touching it as we speak. But we're trying to find you a copy of it. I think it's long out of print, but great film. We have the great Toby Radloff, a good friend of the show, been on a couple. He's been on a few times, specials, guest spots. Very cool dude. He's an American Splendor. We did the episode 20 Years of American Splendor. The Paul Giamatti vehicle about Harvey Picar. The famed, comic book dude. It was cool to kind of sit down. We've had he was on the network once before for a straight interview, just talking about his stuff, and his life and the come up and stuff like that. I think he did 2 Christmases. He's always popping in for the Christmas specials. Always love having him. This episode was mainly just kind of talking about his involvement with, American Splendor and Harvey Picar and kind of how it all came about. You know what I mean? How he met Harvey, how Harvey put him in the book, and then how like the book kind of blew Harvey up, and then he the movie came from it. You know what I mean? Judah Freelander plays Toby in the film, does a great job too. And yeah, it was just a good time. You know what I mean? Rest in peace, Harvey. He passed away, I want to say, roughly around the time the movie came out. Tragically, of course. Super talent. But yeah, let's want to pop into this. Do you want to say anything about the episode before we jump in, or?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Like Matt said, we've known Toby for a while. We've had him on different specials and all of that. It was great talking to him. We also delve into him being on MTV for a bit, and because of being in the American Splendor comic book and getting notoriety because of that, that's how he got onto MTV, which led to other stuff. But yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to him and talking about the whole his friendship with Harvey Pecor and and the creation of the American Splendor comics. I definitely say if you're not hip to them, try to find it. I mean, as Matt said, the graphic novel that he has is out of print, but I'm sure you can probably find on eBay or some other places where they might have single comics or maybe that book that's out of print. But I definitely say I recommend people check it out. I mean, before we started working with Toby, me personally, I didn't know about American Splendor, the comic.
The comic book itself is probably pretty expensive. You're probably better off trying to find the graphic novel, because I believe you got like R. Crumb, I think did like the artwork on it or something like that, who's legendary, who's also passed, and Picar's legendary in his own right of writing, and yeah, you're probably better off trying to find the book. You could probably find the comics, but if you find them on eBay, they're probably expensive, and your best bet, maybe buy the comics, send them to the BoomBastiCAST, and then go find the graphic novel. That's probably your best bet, I'd say. But with that being said, let's check in with our good old pal, Toby Radloff. So Harvey started adding you into his comics. That was kind of like you were friendly with him at work. And
yeah, a lot of them were stories we told at work. I first appeared in number 9, American Splendor. That was when Harvey was still self-publishing it, and I was featured on the cover of that comic.
Oh yeah!
And I think that came out in '83.
As a collector, did you keep up with? Did you collect the comics he was releasing? Were you like interested from?
I got like the whole run of his self-released books, and he did manage to finally give me a number 1.
Wow! Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, he did give me a number 1 later on. He gave me like everything from 2 up, but later on he did manage to find a number 1 to give to me.
You got friends on
high
places.
I got like the whole run of the self-published ones.
That's awesome. That's crazy. That's history. You know what I mean?
I'm my coffin.
No, I do it myself. It's all right. Sometimes it's needed. You know what I mean?
That's what coffee is for, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you gotta melt it down with some hot coffee. That's what I do.
Yeah, warm coffee in this case, because I made that cup half an hour ago.
Yeah. Now, when he started to kind of get successful with it, did the people in work kind of show him respect for it, or like I know sometimes
everyone did take notice, and as I said, the comic books got word of mouth. That's basically how Harvey ended up on David Letterman, and how I ended up on MTV.
So yeah, I wanted to get into that. I know that Harvey went on Letterman, and he has some of the most legendary interviews out there. If anybody hasn't seen them or heard them, I believe they're all on YouTube. I mean, definitely see the flick that they go into it heavy into the movie. There's some real life footage from Letterman and him in the movie, but they're out there. And yeah, so MTV approached you from you, the kind of the success of the comic.
Yeah, they sent a camera crew to work, because of my work, to do something on Harvey. Harvey introduced me to the film crew, the
Yeah.
MTV crew, and I appeared like in a number of scenes. I appeared like about 3 or 4 segments where a team from New York came in,
Yeah.
and then at a Superman convention, met Wayne Allen Harold for the first time. This was back in 1988.
You
And
like a
then-
V you because you were like an MTV VJ kind of deal for a little bit.
Sort of, I was like talking about how I felt, genuine nerd. And then from there, Wayne Allen Harold did a number, and Mark Bosco did a number of segments that ran, like I think between 88 and early 1990.
Yeah.
And then they ended, and then the last one was, I think, like like the summer of 91 when Killer Nerd came out.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. Always a blast with Toby, man. He's such a great dude. He's a sweetheart. I love whenever we get to sit down with Toby. He's got great stories, and he's just a sweetheart of a person. Also in the film, you know what I mean? He's in our current film, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe our film is the last film that he did before he retired from acting. So that's also an honor, you know what I mean? Toby's the man, and it was glad to kind of put our legacies together and more than just the BoomBastiCAST. You know, our film legacies are kind of intertwined now as well. Also, Killer Nerd. If you ain't never seen Killer Nerd and you like underground, exploitation, wild films, Toby was a part of this double feature, which was Killer Nerd and Bride of Killer Nerd, where you guessed it, he's a nerd that kills, and I already gave away too much. There's also a cool there's a nerd documentary called Genuine Nerd that was made about Toby. That's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Toby's the man. I love Toby to death. He's one of the sweetest and coolest dudes there ever was. But speaking of cool dudes, this season brought a few people to our show that I never thought we would ever get a chance to kind of sit down and talk with. And one of those people is the great Taco, man. The singer, the crooner, the old crooner, as they say. You know what I mean? Probably most famously known for Putting on the Ritz. If you've never heard Putting on the Ritz, pause this and go click on the YouTube video for the music video for Taco Putting on the Ritz. That song popped into my life maybe 20 plus years ago. And the first time I heard that, I was floored. It's just such like it's kind of hard to explain other than just saying it's great. You know what I mean? It's like, it's got a dark vibe to it, but it's a dancey song. And it's just, I love it, dude. I love it. It's one of the greatest songs. I have the full album, the full vinyl. I have the single for it on a 45. You know what I mean? It's just a track that I've always loved. And, it's a film. I love to put it in a film, and it's a song I'd love to put into a film. I don't exactly know who owns it. If Taco owns it, then let's do it, Taco. Let's get it going. We're going to have Taco on again in the future too. He's still killing it. He's out there. He's been releasing new music. Another sweetheart of a person. Every now and then these weird doors will open up, and on the other side of the door are these guests that you would never think in a million years you'd be able to land. You know what I mean? And that was the situation with Taco. An opportunity kind of came, and a door opened, and on the other side was Taco, and I didn't see it coming, and it was just there. And talked to him, great dude. And next thing you know, he's in the film. I mean, not in the film. Get him in. I would love a nice cameo from Taco for sure. Maybe we can swing one of them for the film. But yeah, dude, Putting on the Ritz. I know in this we're gonna talk a little bit about the making of the music video. And I'm gonna let Alex take it away a little bit, but go check out if you've never heard of Putting on the Ritz by Taco, go check it out. And I will say this, even though he's mostly known for probably Putting on the Ritz, his first 2 albums are incredible. They're all good, but those first 2 albums are out. You don't skip songs. You just put them on and you listen all the way through, and they're bangers. You know what I mean? Just great, dude. And he's still making good tunes. I love his tunes. I every time a new song comes out, I'm on it. I'm fucking on it like flies on shit, like white on rice. I'm there. Twice as nice. What do you got to say about the Taco Man?
Hey, all I have to say is it was great having Taco on the show. I mean, I think I know in my case, "Putting on the Ritz" is an older song.
Yeah.
Which I actually first time I ever heard it was Young Frankenstein. There's that classic scene in there where they do a rendition of that. Now, what's great is Taco took that song, and then this was during the '80s, and he took the '80s synth, that style, and then he molded this classic song with this style, and it just worked seamlessly together. And honestly, I can't think of anyone who could have pulled it off as good as Taco. And it was so much fun. I mean, I remember seeing that, and I remember I don't know exactly what came out first, but I remember catching the music video of Taco doing "Putting on the Ritz," and I was like, man, this is just so cool.
It's art
And
house.
it's
It's like
always cool when hmm? Yeah, it's always cool when you have someone taking something that's a classic, something that people might say, well, that's old. That's from like the 1920s. No one cares. No one cares about that. And then someone takes that and they're like, well, this is a good song. Let's modernize it. Let's do something to, bring it back. And that's what he did. And I mean the style and the way he did the music video and the sound. I mean, he took a classic song and he made it perfect for the '80s. And I gotta say, I remember watching that as a kid, and I was like, man, this is just so cool.
yeah, dude. It's like art house. Like the music and the video are art house. It's like it's that's real. I mean, that's probably the best way I could describe it. Definitely. If you haven't heard the song, listen to this segment, learn a little bit about it, and then when this is done, pop on the YouTubes. You're already there watching this, and hit up that Taco putting on the Ritz, dude. Glorious stuff. So without further ado, let's hear from Taco himself about the making of the music video.
Watching "Putting on the Ritz" that you did your music video. I really loved all the visuals in there, and the little tap dancing sequence I loved. Um, the question I have about that is when you were putting the music video together, what was I mean, there's a lot of different things that was going on. That what were you trying to get across with the song and also the music video? Because there's a lot of different things that you can pull from it. With the vagabonds in the beginning and more of the those dressed up with the face paint. And I was always curious what was going through your mind when you were creating that.
Well, you have to understand, I was on tour, and when you have a song that's out in over 45 countries charting, back in those days, we didn't have videos.
Yeah.
So we got to a point where the record company said, we need a video now. We can't, because I was jetting across the globe doing television shows. Mm-hmm. And then they found a company in Brussels, Belgium, to tape it. And I was just flown in. I met the director, and he said, this is my concept. You're going to be king of the beggars. And he found a location to film it. That was an old department store that was full of debris, and it was about to be torn down.
Yeah.
And so you come there and you have 48 hours, not anymore, because I had to fly away again. So we had to really sit and brainstorm really fast his ideas. He just had the idea, okay, I want you amongst beggars, because he was Belgian, and he thought it was all about, high society, and wanted this political thing, where you got two sides of society. And so I could relate to that. I said, okay, yeah, that's a crazy idea. Me as king of beggars, okay. And then for the tap dancing, I had to do the choreography on the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And so I came up with this Bob Fosse thing, where you go in slow motion and have other dancers going by. But when I met the dancers, they were semi-professional. I think they were just amateurs.
Mm.
And, to be very honest, not very glamorous looking or in any way where I would say, hey, wow, they look like real, dancers. I had that privilege much later with like the golden, that's all the Gold Girls. And so on the spur of the moment, I came up with it. Hey, we could do this Al Jolson thing. Give these girls the makeup.
Yeah.
Then you got another link back to the 20s when people of color were not allowed in the movies.
Yeah.
And we got all their faces looking the same.
Yeah.
So there was absolutely no idea about black facing back at that time. It was really an homage to Al Jolson, the jazz singer, that famous movie. That's all I thought about. Wait, get all these elements into it.
Yeah.
And when it came to the ending, where I do the Alexander's Ragtime Band, or I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. That you got the slow and the old guys.
Yeah.
And so, but this was all spontaneous. It was all on the spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And I think a very cool video came out of that.
I love the video. I know it. I know it did catch some flack for that, the Al Jolson deal, but it's like, I think it is try and go at anything like that nowadays.
I got so much hell for that, but much later, not in the 80s, much later. And what can I say? People are so sensitive nowadays.
Modern problems,
You have to really watch out what you say, what you do, and I was so sick of all these racist comments because I am the last human being on this planet that is racist. I mean, I'm half Indonesian, half Jewish, half Dutch, half French, blah blah blah. And I would have thought, the United States, which is a country of immigrants, wouldn't be that touchy, And I would have loved to scream out to all of them, hey, this is your history.
Right.
I know it's not perfect. I mean, who has a perfect history?
Right.
But okay, so we took it down and
some cutting, I think, edited some stuff up. You got us,
So
I hold it close to my heart.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Exactly.
I always took like the metaphoric of like almost like, even though you have money, you're not quite, you're not great because you have money. It's kind of showed the flaws a little bit in like, I think that's kind of the thing I took from the music video. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everybody, interprets something different in it, and I kind of like, I like the idea of these contrasts. I try to look at life as not black and white, but a lot of shades of gray.
Yeah. Putting on the Ritz, dude. I have it echoing in my brain as I watched. That was fantastic. Definitely go check out that tune. You know what I mean? Speaking of art house, Michael St. Michael's up next. Great dude. Much love to Michael. Very cool guy. We had him also on, I think he was on the Behold the Pill podcast show, which was very cool. You know, what was his man, I have brain damage. I got the BD going on right now because I'm forgetting there was a horror film that he was done. We talk about it in the interviews. A horror film.
Video drone?
The Video Dead. The Video Dead.
Dead.
Yeah.
Not my bad.
But I've been no, it's okay. I've been a fan ever since I've seen this. He got a small part in that, but been a fan ever since that. It's such a fun. He's such a fun actor. Whenever he's on screen, he lights up the screen, and he takes the attention away because he's so almost bombastic in a way. You know, he's so like entertaining and just kind of demands the attention in the room, which is a great thing. He came again, with a bigger role. He came across my radar with a film called The Greasy Strangler, which is like a low budget indie film, not super low budget, probably like in the $500,000 to $700,000 range, I'd guess, maybe even over $1 million, never know. But just a wild, weird, wacky type of film, but he kills it. He's legendary in it. You know what I mean? And very cool dude. It was a lot of fun to have Michael on the show. You know what I mean? Do you want anything you want to say about the show, the episode before we rock on?
Nothing much other than it's great having Michael St. Michael on the show. One of the funny things is we end up talking about he is an older gentleman, and he does spend a lot of time in the movie. How should we say? A little bit nude,
A little naked, yeah.
a little naked, naked. Now, I myself, I would probably never be in a movie naked because I'm a little too self-conscious for that. But it was interesting, how he said he just embraced it and went with it, and I mean that's cool. And again, I give him a lot of kudos. I know I couldn't pull that off.
Did we get you naked for Victoria or no?
Well, yeah, but luckily whoever edited only kept in my glorious chin profile and nothing else.
There you go. Well,
so my glorious chin made it into the movie, nothing else. And that's one of the few times I'm happy that happened.
That's one of the perks of being an executive producer sometimes.
Well, what can I say? Only Matthew Fisher can convince me to drop trout.
That's true, and much kudos to everybody that got naked for Victoria. Much love to all y'all out there. So with that being said, let's talk about what it's like to get naked on The Greasy Strangler with Michael St. Michael's. All right, The Greasy Strangler. Now, I want to open this up by saying we make independent films, and we'll see a lot of indie films, and some of them kind of miss the mark. You kind of see where they're going for a quirky comedy, but it doesn't quite work out. And the way that they use, in my research, I realized that every little bit of dialogue was scripted. You know what I mean? But the way that it's performed, it just flows. You would almost feel it was very improv-like. You know what I mean? So, how did you get involved with The Greasy Strangler? We'll start off.
Well, I read for an evening with Beverly Loughlin a couple of years before The Greasy Strangler. And I got a call back, and I read again for a different character in the thing. And I think I spoke 2 words with Jim when I was thinking about what I was going to do for the next part of the scene, because the whole thing was new when I got there. It wasn't what I did before. And then later, I did this this short called Making It with Katerina Fabrik, who they found her. And she told me they were looking for me. So I went up there and the casting directors really worked hard for me, which is the first time I've ever seen casting directors do that, because I know I've had that job too. And usually you just, you know, do your thing. Can you give me a little more of this or a little more of that? But they were very specific and very good. And Jim was in there for that one. And I know on the way out, he says, "Do you mind being naked?" And I said, "Well, I don't care as long as I don't have to see it." And he says, "Will you wear a prosthetic dick?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" You know, and that thing saved me though, because I never felt naked. I always had my fig leaf. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, not to pull back the curtain too much, but
yeah, and I didn't realize how many times I would end up seeing that film.
Which it's a good thing overall, yeah.
I mean, the first time I saw it, I was in shock, because I have a mental image of myself, and that wasn't it. I remember during the Q&A, somebody said, "Grab that microphone away from him." And by the next day, I started thinking, well, in 10 years, I'm going to wish I looked that good.
That's how it goes. Yeah. Yeah, it looks super uncomfortable. To pull back the curtain a little more, I believe it for a lot of it's you got like a bodysuit on type deal. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all greased up. Yeah, and then a little on the face.
That stuff was horrible. That stuff would give you frostbite in the Sahara in the summer. It's for ice that they use under it, and it's all menthol and something else. But I mean, you'll be shivering on a hot day.
Yeah.
In this stuff, and one day I had to sit. At first I was in the sun, and then because people were walking by, they built a tent for me to sit in, and I was in that for about 7-8 hours. And they put a space heater in there for me. But I couldn't go out because we were shooting in a residential neighborhood, and they were upset about kids seeing me.
But once it's released, it's okay. Everybody will see it once it's released.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. Somebody drew me a picture, and I have it on my fan page. As a 7-year-old kid did this thing, so I guess I'm now kid friendly too.
Oh, yeah.
So letting him watch it,
Yeah, man, Michael's a trip, dude. It's always fun to talk with him. Next up, we have a gentleman that we got the privilege of working with as well as being fans of, the great Courtney Gaines. Some of you might know him from Children of the Corn, Colors, The Burbs, maybe a film that we made called The House Across the Street. You know what I mean? It was a lot of fun doing this interview, working with him. Very cool dude. Lila did those, The Burbs and Colors. Children of the Corn I like, but The Burbs and Colors I love. You know what I mean? The Burbs is going to be one of the greatest movies from the 90s, which means one of the greatest movies ever, because as we journey forth in this world, things don't really they don't reach that place. They're kind of, it almost feels like the best times for cinema are behind us in a way, but that's a sad outlook, I guess. We talk about The Burbs in this episode, but in this segment that we're going to show in the full episode, but in this segment that we have a clip from, we talk about Colors, directed by Dennis Hopper, starring Robert Duvall and Sean Penn and Courtney Gaines. If you've never seen The Burbs, is more kind of well known, I feel. That's something you'll see, everywhere pretty much. The Colors is a little more behind the scenes. You don't really see it that often. Like there was a time when it played on TV more, not so much. I don't even know if it's got, I believe it got a Blu-ray release, but it might not have. I have the DVD and the VHS of it. I got a really cool VHS of it too, with like half of the tapes red, or a quarter of it's red rather, the little flippy lip. But Colors is a movie that I seen, I think, on TV back in the day. It's kind of a movie about cops, the right and wrong things to do, the relationship between cops in the street, how that you can have a good relationship or a bad relationship. And Courtney plays like a hood dude. And, you know, I don't want to, even though this clip's probably going to spoil the movie for some people, I don't want to spoil it because it's that great. But there's a very emotional scene in it. And I think I even say in this clip that this is one of the only scenes that to this day, every time I watch it, I get a tear in my eye. No matter how many times I watch it, it's just that powerful, the scene, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
with that being said, we're gonna kind of roll into the clip. Or if Alex wants to say anything, he can say something. But
Oh, I can? Okay.
all right, this is the clip. Say what you gotta say. Say what you
Hey.
gotta say.
I'm just gonna toss in a little thing that what was great about talking to Courtney, especially about colors. This only really focuses on a scene with the Robert Duvall character and Courtney, who was on set during that. And it's always what I mean. You have to understand, when we bring people on our show, we're fans of them, but it's always fun listening to them talking about the people they're fans of,
Right.
especially when they work with them, and how they are either inspired or just moved by what they're watching. And that was the case in this instance. So it was a lot of fun listening to Courtney talk about seeing one of his idols, Robert Duvall, in an extremely moving and touching scene.
I want to pop into a film that I love.
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper directed, Colors.
Yeah, man.
Magnificent. It's such ahead of its time. Movie.
Yes.
I cry at the end of that movie every time. That ending scene is like, it's so impactful. It's crazy.
It's that Duvall's death scene is personally the best work I've ever seen, live,
Yeah.
I was 2 feet away from him,
Yeah.
and after it, I was just so blown away. Like a little kid, I had to go up to him and I was like, dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
And he was very humble, and he was like, I wish they had used my first take. I wish my first take, my master, was the close-up, because I don't have another one like that in me. And it was true. So what happened was, right before they were ready to film, there was a problem with the light, and so he was already on the ground and all ready to go, right? Like, they call him in, it's go time. The actor builds to that moment. They come in, they're ready to go. They're like, I'm sorry, we have a light problem. And it was like 45 minutes he was lying on the ground. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is Robert Duvall. It's 2:00 in the morning and he's in the dirt. Like, what are you doing? And finally, Dennis Hopper comes in and goes, okay, we're ready. You ready? He's like, yeah, I'm ready. And then he just killed, right? Just killed. But it was the master.
Yeah.
And afterward, they did the close-ups, and the close-ups were good, but the master was like special,
Yeah.
And if you'll notice, now you're a film watcher, you'll notice when they go into the close-up, you'll look, it's grainy a little bit, and it's kind of at a weird tilt. It's because they blew up into that master.
Okay, I have wondered that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a brilliant move to make, because 2 reasons. One, because the performance was fantastic, but the way the film was shot, Haskell Wexler is award-winning cinematographer, but for like documentary style stuff. So like that handheld, the steady cam, and so you could get away with that, like a little more like jump in like that real grit feeling, because that's the way the whole film was shot. But I thought that was a brilliant move to go in there and get that, because you literally see the film as the moment he dies, the kind of the film like lightens up for a second. There's almost like this little, I'm like, the dude like affected the freaking 35 millimeter, you know what I mean? Like, it's something happened. I mean, he's a shaman, dude. It was incredible. It's the finest piece, like I said, it's the finest piece of work. I was already a huge Robert Duvall fan.
Yeah.
And he just really delivered, man.
Segment deep. That movie's super deep. Colors is definitely a must watch if you haven't seen it. Courtney's fantastic in it. You know what I mean? Duvall, fucking incredible. Like I said, dude, there's plenty of dramatic films that I go back to just to watch style and the way they make and just because it's almost comfort food sometimes. Some of those earlier movies that you kind of fell in love with cinema over, the great, you get discouraged or you're having a bad day or you just want to take a trip down memory lane, you throw them on. Colors is one of those films. Definitely peep it out. Like I said, Dennis Hopper, man. Dennis Hopper's always getting kudos for Easy Rider, which Easy Rider is a very good film. I know he wasn't a big fan of how it got cut together. It was one of those situations where the producers kind of took it and did some cuts on it and stuff like that. He was like a wild, crazy artiste type director. You know what I mean? I would love to have met Dennis Hopper. I know a friend of ours, Billy McAdams, got a chance to work with them and was friendly with them. And we're going to have him on here one of these days. And that's one of the things I want to kind of tap into is Dennis Hopper, like what it was like to kind of know and hang with Dennis Hopper. But like I was saying, like Easy Rider is a masterpiece. There's no doubt about it. But I think Colors is an even better film, and it doesn't get the credit that it should. Like I said, Duvall and Sean Penn are fucking at the top of their game. Incredible, dude. Incredible. A couple years ago when it was like it was a bunch of in like society, there was like a big thing with like the police and you know, there was like that big riff, because the cops were, there's always some bad apples at every batch, you know what I mean? And when it's people like that, and I'm not justifying anything because, when you're there to protect and you're being paid to protect and you're not protecting, you're kind of doing the opposite. That's a horrifying thing and it's fucked up. And there's no need for it, but there's also good cops too, you know what I mean? So like there was a time that happened and everybody remembers where it was anti-cop and this, that, and the other thing. And I think that almost still kind of lingers because you'll see TV shows, but you don't often see too many. Only Uwe Boll has the balls to make a movie about the Bolls to make a fucking movie about cops. You don't really see it anymore, but Colors is like the same way that I often say that people like I feel like the Breakfast Club should be shown the first day of high school to everybody to kind of let them know they're all the same person and going through the same experience in a way. I almost feel like Colors should be treated in that same situation. I don't show it's I don't know where it'd be shown, but like it's an important
First
film.
day of a police academy.
I was thinking that, but I don't think it would fly for that. I mean, you could, but like there's a right. You're an adult at that point. There's a right and a wrong path to take, and you're gonna take whichever you want to take, type deal. But it's almost like there's that element of that importance, like the same way that I think the Breakfast Club would be important for teenagers going into high school to see. I don't know who I'd want to show it to, but I feel like Colors is just important in that societal situation of people hating on cops and vice versa. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the deal of like, we are all in this together. You're going to have good, you're going to have bad. Colors is really it's like a beautiful movie for real. Like it's kind of, I'd almost put like American History X in that kind of category too, where like, yeah, it's definitely a rough movie. Like there's a lot of wild shit, but it deals with like important subjects and it kind of it flips the script of like, okay, because how you follow like racist people, but they go through a progression and realize that it's kind of all bullshit. So they kind of pull themselves out of it. In American History X, it's kind of like Colors where it's a little too late. You know what I mean? But it's different because the situation's different. It still has that dramatic oomph type deal at the end where you go, "Ooh, fuck." It leaves you kind of feeling like, man, like, but I don't know if they do that so people go, "Don't let that be you." You know what I mean? I think that might be the potency of scenes like that is like, these people are taking this sacrifice so you don't have to, like, do better. You know what I mean? But yeah, very fantastic film. I would love to see more colors, and not just out of my eyeballs, spectrum wise. I'd like to see, the more film, the film out there more. It's got to have an anniversary rolling through. And if I had the power, I would definitely, like a couple of years back, I know J.J. Abrams remastered Phantasm for 4K for a whole new audience type deal. If I had the powers, I'd probably do the remastering and put out the original film of colors, because it's a very important film that I think people should see. But with that being said, we're gonna roll up into our next. If you see Courtney at the cons, go give him go buy something from him, give him a handshake, tell him you're a big fan. His episode of the cast, I know he likes to hear that, and he's a good dude. Next up, another great dude in the film world, Kurando Mitsuaki. You know what I mean? Big fan. You know what I mean? He's on. We had him come on the show to talk about Lion Girl, based off of a manga. He's done so many cool films. You know what I mean? Karate Kill is probably one of my top favorites of his. Maniac Driver was really fun too. I like that one a lot. Mitsutaki's a super cool dude, big genre fan. You know what I mean? Which I always love talking to filmmakers that are fans of films. I seen Mick Garris was recently talking about this on the book. He's like, it's so weird when like horror directors don't like know about the horror movies that came before them. And it's true, it's actually should be blanketed. You can take horror out of it and just say, film directors don't know, and I always comment, it's so weird when you'll meet like a film director that you go to their house and they don't have like a collection of films, like it's not something they do for their entertainment. It's just like, oh, I can make money at this, so let me try it. It's cool and I can make money, let me try this. And they're not so much like people that grew up with it are fans of it, you know what I mean? It's also kind of a scary deal where like me and Alex have both met like newer filmmakers that'll tell you what their favorite movies are, but they can't tell you who made their favorite movies. I always think that's very weird too. But that's there. But Kurando is a dude that's a film fan all the way through. We met Kurando, dude, like 10 years ago, maybe even more, at Rock and Shock. Kept up with him. Kurando's super fucking talented. He's a higher budgeted indie film than we are, and some of our peers. But like, you watch a Kurando movie that it looks like it's a well put together film. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll watch a film that's made for $2-3 million and it looks like it's made for fucking $300,000. Like, they were struggling, even though we've never had a budget that high, and I would probably make Citizen Kane with fucking $300,000. But like, you'll see some filmmakers that have real budgets that make like shitty movies, you know what I mean? Or shitty TV shows. We've seen them too.
Yeah.
And Kurando's a dude that can take not a gigantic amount of money, but make the finished product look like he had a lot of money. You know what I mean? I know with Maniac Driver in itself, there was an issue. I don't know if we get into this in the clip. I don't think we do. Where he had funding for Maniac Driver, and like the studio that was going to give him half the money, like, backed out last minute for whatever reason. And I think they had like 8 days or even less to shoot a feature-length film. And he was very wise with it. He took what money they had, and they hired the right people, and they banged out a beautiful looking film. You know what I mean? And well put together film in very little time, which is kudos. I mean, there's a lot of stress. You got to talk about the hustle and bustle of go, get it done, get it done. You also have to add into your brain how much overdrive your brain is of, okay, thinking 10 steps ahead, all right, we got to get this done perfectly in these fucking 2 takes. Boom, 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 move to the next, keep it going, and not let the film lack, that you have to keep that momentum. And he's like, and he did it perfectly. And I always got to give kudos. Another dude who I consider to be friends with, I consider him to be friends with us over here at the cast and at the Boom. Another dude who's seen he's seen Insomniac and gave me good praise. You know, I gotta give. I love when a filmmaker sees a film and they got good things to say. I can't help it. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, dude, it's always good to have Carando on. Upward and Onward with him. He's a dude who I think people will be hearing a lot more of. I know, like in previous seasons, you know, every now and then we'll have somebody on the show that you might not have heard of before, but it's somebody that we think that in the future you will know the name, even if you don't know them now. So we want to get a jump on it. So like your people that are in the genre fans, horror fans, exploitation fans, I think those folks probably know Carando. If not, they should. But I think that his name will be more well known. I think Carando will be in a good position. You take like a Stephen C. Miller, a guy who kind of started making horror films and then jumped into action films, and now he's making a pretty good career out of it and gotten bigger and working with Stallone, Bruce Willis, stuff like that. I think Carando's like that, like pretty soon. Like I can see Carando's films going to theatrical. He's had him like small theatrical runs, but I could see him making like a pretty decent theatrical run with his films. I think it's a matter of just finding the right studio to back it type deal. But definitely a super talented dude. And I know in this clip, I believe we talk about the Lion Girl and kind of the transformation of it becoming a manga to becoming a film. You know what I mean? I think this was kind of shot on a lower budget. And yeah, I like I said, Karate Kill is incredible. There's Gun Girl, I believe it. My 3 favorite films from Carando are probably Karate Kill, Gun Girl, I believe it is, or maybe Gun Woman, and then Maniac Driver. Maniac Driver is just it's like Taxi Driver and Maniac meet, you know what I mean? And it's a fun film, you know what I mean? Lion Girl was fun too, and you're about to hear a little bit about the making of that right now. Alex, do you want to say anything before we cruise in?
Just that it's always great talking to filmmakers who are not quite, big budget, Hollywood, but, are definitely, independent, higher than us, but that we appreciate. I mean, Carando is awesome. Lion Girl is a great film. I make a comment in this clip about it's a perfect mashup of American and Japanese kind of style. I mean, you see a lot of course, Japanese style, but there's also a lot of American style in there. And I love it when you have someone who can take 2 different cultures and way of seeing things and just meld them seamlessly.
Yeah.
And that's Carando. And that's all I gotta say about that. So I say we go check out the clip.
Let's go check it out.
I really felt, maybe it's just me, but I felt like it was almost a mashup style wise of Japanese and American like style put together.
Okay.
And I thought that was really interesting because of with the way you have it where you have the 2 square off, and then you have the subtitle, the title of like the beam that the
Sure.
character uses and all that. I thought that was really cool and really almost had a little bit of a feeling of like Pokemon, where they're using the different
Sure.
I call you Pikachu, use lightning bolt. I thought that was really cool. I really thought that was fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it's basically, I mean,
kind of a mishmash of, you know, anime, American movie, Japanese movie. You know, that's really who I am. You know, I was born and raised in Japan till I was 17. Then I came over here. Um, I grew up here, so I've lived in the States for over 30 years now. So, you know, I think I am the hybrid, you know, between the Japanese culture and the American culture, and I think Lion Girl, the style of it, you know, really that represents who I am, and you know, I definitely wanted to pay homage to Japanese anime and tokusatsu stuff. You know, like whenever the hero does something, you know, subtitle of the, you know, of the superpower or the beam or the whatever, you know, just comes on the screen. You know, it's like, and you know, also I love the you know, voice of God narration that, you know, frequents in those genre, you know, anime and stuff like that. And you know, I grew up watching shows like that, so you know, and you rarely see voice of God narration for, you know, American subculture, pop culture stuff. So I wanted to definitely incorporate that, and so, you know, so that's really my style. You know, I've done that for my other movies too. So very spiritual, which I appreciate. You know what I mean? We're talking
Cool.
about American. They don't put God in there. They're like afraid of the God thing. You know what I mean? Right. Now, what was it? Go Nayagi? I could be murdering his name. Loosely based off of like his characters, right? Yeah, Go Nagai actually. It's yeah, he's the living legend of Japanese manga world. You know, he's unfortunately his notoriety is not you know, that huge in North America, but in Europe, you know, like France, Italy, Spain, you know, his animations were animation stuff were all over the TV. You know, my generation, say like the kids who grew up in the 70s and 80s, in Europe, Go Nagai's name is, you know, household name over there. So it's very fascinating. But yeah, Mr. Nagai, I've been, you know, lifelong fan of his work. You know, I've read all his comic books. I collected his books, and you know, so it was such an honor to be able to team up with him and adapt his this newly you know, drawn, never seen before character. Originally, you know, wrote, you know, drew for us. You know, this was something that he created for us to adapt into a movie. So that was really amazing. So yeah, the Go Naga is amazing, and he's my creative hero, and I finally got to work with him. All right, so that was Karando Mitsutaki, our boy. If you're not hip to his films, get hip to his films, because he ain't going nowhere. He's here to stay. You know what I mean? Good dude, good dude. Our next clip, I believe, comes out of the Horrorween special. You know what I mean? The great Frank Farel. That's right, Frank Farel from Spookies, Street Trash. I believe he was even in Dawn of the Dead. I think he was he had a small part in there. Romero gave him like a little cameo, zombie or something like that. Frank Farel's a very cool dude. He's still he's trying to work on a sequel to Spookies, you know what I mean, which we hope to see get going. A lot of sequels are coming out from, maybe not a lot, but like there's a handful of sequels being put out by filmmakers that, you know, done the original a few years back or so, maybe a little more than a few years back. That I'm looking to check out. You know, I'm always curious. You like the original, at least you got the original people coming back to make it. So I'm always interested to see what they do. You know what I mean? But with Frank, we're gonna pop into a little of the one of the things we like to talk about whenever we get a chance to, whenever it comes up. We always love diving down this rabbit hole of the paranormal. You know what I mean? And I know that there was a few spooky things that happened on the set of Spookies that we're gonna hear about here. And in just a few moments after the great Alexander Hawk has a comment about the clip before we go in.
Yeah, I mean, nothing much more to add other than it was great talking to Frank Farrell. It was our Halloween special. We also had collaborator Billy Coyne, also
BC, yeah.
on the show. He actually asks the question in this clip coming up. And I mean, it was great, talking about the creation of Spookies, and it's one of those films that that he brought up where, I mean, if anyone's watched it, it kind of feels like two films put together.
Right.
And there were some things, some issues on set that ended up causing this, but in the end, it's still a fun, great little horror film from back then. And like Matt said, he is right now. He put out a thing saying that Spookies 2 is going forward. I'm wishing him the best of luck, and I can't wait to see what he has in store.
Yeah, I mean, but there was it changed hands once or twice, so it kind of is almost like two movies that were cut together to make sense. But don't let that scare you away, because it's still a pretty solid film, and the makeup and the effects are really good in it. Very creepy stuff, you know what I mean? This is a movie that I seen as too young. My first introduction really to horror was my uncles would rent the horror VHS, and then I would watch them with them. And as a child, probably too young. And Spookies is one of those movies that I seen a little too young, probably. And there's scenes that like stuck with me. Like I Spit on Your Grave really young, and the scene that stuck with me with that was when the dude gets his peck of wood cut off in the tub when he loses pinochle. That stuck with me. Toxic Avenger I seen really young. The scene that stuck with me was when Toxie puts the girl on the steam room rocks and burns her buttocks. House I seen really young, and the scene that always stuck with me was when he drops the shotgun shells and he comes up and his girlfriend's like that weird ogre thing. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 I seen really young. The scene that stuck with me was the scene where he's like puppeteering the kid out the window, and Spookies is right up in there with that. There's a scene in there where like this lady is and it's funny because this lady like turns into a ghoul outside of like a building type deal, and it's these scenes like that. I remember these visuals, and then I like hunted them down, or like seen them later in life and put it together. I'm like, that was what the movie was. There's only one movie that I had burnt in my head that I don't know what it is, and it's a scene with a gang of bikers, and there's a girl, and half of the bikers grab her arms, the other half grab her legs, and they pull her until she like splits in half. So if anybody out there knows what movie that is, send us a message, because that's the only movie that I can't remember. I never stumbled into again later in life. Maybe it was a snuff film or something, I don't know. But I don't remember ever stumbling into that one later in life. So if you all out there know the one, hit us up and let us know in the chat. But before you do, check out this clip from 2023's Horrorween from Boombastic Media Network with the great Frank Farel, cameo appearance by BC Coinstar. Check it out.
On Spookies, even though we had a reasonable budget for the time in terms of a really low budget film, but it was only still, we spent about $250,000. So
that's a gorgeous piece of property that you filmed on as
well.
Oh
yeah. We were lucky to get it. It was very local. It was only about like 2 miles from where I lived at the time in Westchester.
Go wrong with the close location.
Well, you can't, and the fact is also that that whole area is full of like old houses. So I mean, we were looking, we knew we'd find something in the area, but we found something closer that was good for myself and my two partners. And once we got past the negotiation for the use of the space, because we had a lot of obstacles in our way, including the town, who thought we would damage a historical site, which it was, although it wasn't officially declared a national historical landmark until after we shot there. And I think the fact that there was controversy about us possibly shooting there sort of helped that to happen.
And I think I remember correctly on the documentary that you talk about some haunting and some bizarre situations that happened.
Yeah, well, yes, some of the people there have claimed that they had incidents with ghosts or weird things happening, etc. And I've heard these stories. I mean, I don't know what to say. I'm somewhat skeptical about some of these stories.
But you didn't experience any of that yourself, you know.
I have yet to have a supernatural or bizarre experience of any sort, and I'm waiting. I want it to happen.
Mhm.
It's like I want the universe to send me something that will totally freak the fuck out of me.
Yeah.
But it hasn't, you know. I mean, I don't know if I'll be that lucky. And again, I also wonder. It's the kind of thing where I wonder now, because some of these stories that I've heard recently, one of them coming from one of my partners, Brendan Faulkner, on the film, where he's talking about ghosts and this and that, and I don't remember anybody telling these stories at the time we were making the film.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, because I think it was one of the Muckmen himself, an effects artist, an old buddy, Gabe Bertalos.
Yeah.
I think Gabe actually said, you know, like, I thought I heard some woman screaming, you know, I'm
No.
over here doing.
No,
Gabe's,
and I've only heard this from Brendan. I've never actually asked Gabe about this, but he supposedly, as when we were just getting, you know, I think it was within the first few weeks we were on the property, that he went upstairs and then he comes down. He says, "Who's that woman upstairs?" And they said, "What woman?" And apparently he saw some woman upstairs that wasn't upstairs.
Yeah.
But I haven't asked Gabe about it.
It's high energy. It's the energy. You know what I mean?
Well, it could be almost anything. I mean, any old, if there are ghosts, any house that old, a couple of 100 years old, is going to have ghosts.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think some people want to believe, and sometimes I think.
See, my attitude about all these things, about all the paranormal, is I'm totally a fan, and I'm like totally interested, and I would love, you know, one or two of these things to be so, you know, absolutely confirmed that there was no question. But my rational mind also says, well, none of this stuff that a lot of people believe devoutly in has necessarily been proven. It's like, you know, I mean, you can point to this and this and say, oh, this is evidence, but there's not a lot. If these things, if certain things were proven beyond a doubt, we wouldn't be talking about them as if we didn't know whether they existed.
Yeah, it's like the X-Files. I want to believe.
But I think that's a big part of it. And yeah, of course, yeah, I would love to believe all these amazing, weird, interesting things are going on, and I would love to be, you know, surrounded by them and whatever. I don't think if I actually met a ghost, I might initially be shocked because I don't usually meet them, but I don't think I'd be afraid of a ghost. Well, what the fuck is a ghost going to do to me?
Exactly.
I don't believe ghosts are doing things to people.
And that's what's fun about the medium of film, you know, is, you know, to play with even those concepts, like all the Bigfoot movies that there are, you know, and just to create something that you haven't seen before. And that's what's wonderful about telling fantastic stories, you know, where here's something, let's put something out there people believe to a certain aspect, and let's make it entertaining.
Right. And my attitude is like, I don't take the attitude of like, oh, well, I'm a complete disbeliever. I have, you know, no, you know, belief in any of this stuff. I'm like, as I said, I'm open-minded. I have no idea what may or may not be the case. I know where most evidence will point in certain cases and say, oh, this is unlikely or, you know, improbable or whatever, but I'm totally open-minded.
All right. Like I said, that episode was a little spooky. I hope it didn't scare anybody away. It is a Halloween episode clip, so you know, and you might want to get on that quick, because once Halloween 2024 pops in, you can only find that on Patreon. But very creepy stuff. Next up, we're gonna take a little clip from our Christmas special that we rock and roll with every year. I know this year we had Insane Shane, BC, the great Gary K. Wolf, which we're about to get into, and Santa Dawn was in the building. Santa Dawn. Am I missing anybody?
Honestly, I think that was everyone.
I think that was it. Yeah, but the great Gary K. Wolf is our clip from that, and you know, the creator of Roger Rabbit. Know what I mean? And I know in this clip we're about to talk about how, you know, just how the massive I remember being a kid and when Who Framed Roger Rabbit hit the theaters, not just that Christmas, but like Christmas past, like that was everywhere. Even to this day, they're always pushing something Roger Rabbit, you know, whether it's an ornament or whatever, you know what I mean? Fucking stocking for your chimney type deal. It's always in the mix. I think that he's got to be one of the most noticeable, you know, he's right up there with like maybe not Mickey Mouse, but maybe Mickey Mouse, you know what I'm saying? Like he's that identifiable. And in this episode, Gary talks about like the first time he really caught a vibe for how massive the outreach was of Roger Rabbit around the holidays when he popped into a store and was a little overwhelmed, if you will. You know, what do you got to say about that?
Well, only thing I got to add to that is Gary K. Wolf will always have a special place in our heart because he was the first guest
That's
we
right.
ever had on the show, and he very graciously came back for our Christmas special, and it was great talking to him about that. I mean, I think anyone who's ever been a fan of Roger Rabbit should go and check out Who Censored Roger Rabbit. That is the book that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was based on. Now, there is a lot of differences between the book and the movie, and I definitely think it would be cool, definitely for anyone who's a fan of course, Who Framed Roger Rabbit to check it out, to read it, to see where the genesis of that character came from.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, myself and also Matt, we all got, you know, Roger Rabbit ornaments and toys. I mean, we loved it. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is the only movie I went to the theater to watch twice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
2 bunny ears. Yeah.
2 bunny ears. But yeah, it was great, and it was great talking to Gary about the outpour of Roger Rabbit love during the season.
Yeah, I second that with Alex. If you enjoy the film, definitely go pick up the books. You know what I mean? Gary's got a website out there. I wish I knew it at this time, but if you just do Gary K. Wolf, you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it. He has all the books for sale, and you can get them signed too, which is super cool. I got a couple signed books back here from Gary, and we've talked to him. Gary's going to be coming on the show again in the future. I know he just put out a new book. I believe it was about Jessica Rabbit, if I remember correctly. She got her own little sides.
Serious business.
Hell yeah, very mysterious. You know what I mean?
No, serious.
Serious.
Serious business.
Well, me and her used to have a romance, so you know, like Phoebe Cates, you know what I mean? But me and Jessica Rabbit had a thing for a bit, but we had to cut it off because Roger wasn't digging it, and I was respectful of Roger, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with that being said, cut that bullshit and go check out this clip of Gary K. Wolf from the 2023 Christmas special at Boombastic Media.
No, I just decorated my Christmas tree, whoa, I lost track of how many Roger and Jessica ornaments. I've got a ton of Roger and Jessica ornaments. They did. Disney, for some reason, goes wacko with Roger and Jessica stuff for Christmas. There's a lot of Roger Christmas ornaments this year. There's one where him busting through the Maroon Tunes logo, which is really nice. There's a lot of Jessica Christmas ornaments, and they're kind of interesting because in almost all of them, she's sitting on a glass bell. And the 2 things. First of all, the glue holding her to that glass bell is sometimes less than desirable, and she sometimes falls off the glass bell. But also, it's very fragile. Those glass bells get broken really, really easily. So if you got one on your Christmas tree, keep the cat away from it because I'm telling you.
Actually, it's funny because when when Roger came out, one of the things that I got a bunch of was the Roger Rabbit keychains.
Oh yeah, the one with the handcuffs. Did you get the one with the handcuffs?
Yes. I have
Classic.
one of those. And it's funny because I got a few of those, and those are my Christmas ornaments. I still have them to this day. I
great idea.
Yeah.
Great
and,
idea.
and of course, my favorite is the one with him with the handcuffs. Just
Yeah, great idea. Well, you were talking about when the movie came out. I mean, it came out in July, but that was a good year for Roger merchandise at Christmas. When the movie came out, they premiered it at Radio City Music Hall in New York City, and my wife and I were there, of course, and everybody in the theater, all the VIPs were talking about, geez, you got to go over to Macy's. They got Roger Rabbit merchandise for sale, and for me, I mean, this was my baby. This was my project, my movie, my name on the credits, my characters, and I just couldn't imagine that anybody would have made merchandise with my characters. This is incredible. And so the next day, my wife and I went over to Macy's, and I went into Macy's and said to the woman at the front desk, I said, "Do you have Roger Rabbit merchandise for sale?" She says, "Yes." I said, "Where is it?" She says, "Second floor." I said, "Oh, we're on the second floor." She looked at me, she says, "Second floor." So I go up, and the entire second floor is Roger Rabbit merchandise.
Yeah.
And it was as far as you could see everywhere. And I had told my wife, I said, if there's stuff to sell there with Roger Rabbit on it, I'm gonna buy the first thing I see. It's gonna be good luck for me. I'm gonna buy the first thing I see. And I got off the elevator, and the first thing I saw was a Roger Rabbit lunchbox.
Oh yeah.
And it was red with Toontown on the front, had a thermos inside, and it cost $2.95, and I bought it. And I'm just sorry that I didn't see, like the Jumbo Roger, or one of the really neat Wendy Gell pins, or something really spectacular. But I still got the lunchbox, and so I'm walking through the aisles looking at the Roger merchandise, and it's everywhere. There's just every kind of Roger merchandise you can imagine. And I bump into Charlie Fleischer. And Charlie Fleischer is the voice of Roger Rabbit, of course. And Charlie's checking out the merchandise just like I'm checking out the merchandise. I said, "Charlie, you getting a piece of this?" He said, "Yeah, everything with my voice on it." And he says, "You getting a piece of it?" I says, "Yeah, everything." And he got down on his knees and bowed to me. Whoa. And I said, "Charlie," I said, "you got to do something for me." I said, so I picked up a Roger Rabbit doll, and it was a talking Roger Rabbit doll. Pulled the string, and it was Charlie's voice. And I said, "You got to sign this doll for me." And so he signed the doll for me, and it is the first piece of Roger Rabbit merchandise that Charlie signed after the movie came out as Roger Rabbit. And he signed the foot, Charlie Fleischer, with his little drawing, and did a little something else on the other foot. And I still got it. I've got that, and I've got the lunchbox.
All right, folks. That concludes our 2023 to be aired in 2024 best of greatest moments, if you will. Honorable mentions, teasers to go check out the whole interviews episode of the BoomBastiCAST. Again, I want to say I thank you, everybody that listens and watches the show. We really appreciate it. Like Alex said at the beginning, everything's gone up. It's a beautiful thing, and we're really happy that it's kind of catching and the audience is getting bigger. And we couldn't be more happy to be able to kind of bring you guys the BoomBastiCAST with the guests, and even the audio episode where it's just kind of solo episodes with me and Alex, which if you're not hip to them, definitely you can check them out wherever you listen to audio podcasts, whether it's, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, you know what I mean? Anywhere that you listen to podcasts, you'll be able to find the audio BoomBastiCAST episode. which gets you the audio versions of the interviews. Sometimes you get a little more. It'll be like a little uncut more version of some things sometimes, but you also get like just me and Alex shooting the Shiatola about, topics that we find interesting and hope you will too. But yeah, hell yeah, this was another fun year of the BoomBastiCAST. You know what I mean? We're already hard at work on next year's interviews. I think if we don't have the whole year done already, then we got at least 3/4 of it done, maybe even done. Can you give it an official word on whether or not that's the deal?
Not 100%. I believe, might be wrong, but I think we have at least 10 interviews in the can. We do one interview per month, so we're almost practically there at having the next season complete. But then again, I mean, we can still keep on doing interviews, keep on adding it up, and
Oh, yeah.
depending on who we get and whether there's any time constraints, we might move things around a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Sometimes we move things around, peel back the curtain a little bit on the cast, because we do the films and stuff and live lives and work jobs and do the whole 9 yards on that stuff. We usually like to work in chunks. So like we might just take a 3-month block that multiple three, 4 times, hardly ever 4, but we've done it before. But 2 or 3 times a week, we're laying down, just grabbing interviews with folks and doing it big like that, doing it big, archiving them away for a bright sunny day to lay across your eyelids and your ear holes. You know what I mean? So again, thank you to all the guests that were on the show in the last year. Thank you to all the people that have been tuning in, and thank you to all the people that have been tuning in since the get-go. We have nothing but love for all y'all, and we're very extremely thankful that you guys tune in and you girls tune in. Y'all, everybody, every single one of you that tune in and enjoy the BoomBastiCAST. It means a lot to us. We're incredibly thankful for that. It's a blessing, and we hope to kind of bring you a lot more stuff that you enjoy. And keep up the good work over there, everybody listening and doing their part, commenting, liking, sharing. It's a beautiful thing. We really do appreciate it, and we love bringing you this show. You know what I mean? Do you want to say anything to the folks before we bounce out?
Nothing other than that we're great. We're very thankful for the guests we have on the show, for the fans that come back and watch our episodes, and the thing is that I'm putting it out there. If there's someone that you would like us to get on the show, or you think we should look into, leave in the comments. Let us know. I mean, the thing is, and we're not just looking for actors. We're looking for directors. We're looking for writers, authors,
comedians, musicians, wrestlers, sports entities, podcaster, radio personalities, anybody,
producers. I mean,
producers, the whole deal.
Yeah, we're totally open because we want to hit people that their job is to entertain us, and we want to, peel back the curtain and see what makes them tick, why they create what they create, and how they feel about their creation. Some people love their creations, others are like, yeah, I did it. It wasn't that good, but yeah, I did it. But we still want to hear those stories because, we're interested.
Yeah. We also open it up to other indie artists too. We're going to start talking to more indie artists of all those different things for like our audio episodes and stuff like that. And we got hit up by a few indie artists recently not recently, but over the last couple of months that we kind of gave some audio episode love to, you know what I mean? And had some good chats with them. And if you're in that category, you're an underground artist, you want to come on, promote your stuff, talk shop. Just like if you have guests that you would like to hear on there, I believe you can hit us up on the social media, BoomBastiCAST Facebook page. You can hit me and Alex directly, or we also have the BoomBastiCAST at gmail.com for anybody that kind of wants to kind of check in there and get a dialogue going about, popping on. You know what I mean? We have fun with everybody. And for a while, we were only kind of having our own indie like pals on that we've kind of worked with or maneuver with. But I think we had a few people that reached out to us, and just kind of strangers. I think we had an author, we had an actor, we had a writer of scripts. You know what I mean? We had another filmmaker that we didn't know until they hit us up, and we had them on, and we had a lot of fun with them. So we're looking to do a lot more of that. So if you're out there trying to push something or promote something, you want to come on the show. I know you're probably seeing a lot of these bigger guests, but we're always down to talk to anybody. So shoot us a message. We're not going to shoot you a message, but if you want to shoot us a message, you'll get on the show at some point. We'll put you on the list, and it'll be a fun time. So with that being said, we hope you all enjoyed this. We hope everybody out there has a great Thanksgiving. And again, we all want to say mucho gracias, and much love and thanks to everybody tuning in. If you've been here from day one, or this is the first time ever hearing the cast, much love to you. And we hope you enjoy the ride with us. And yeah, this is our Thanksgiving episode. So much thanks to everybody out there supporting the show. Much thanks to all the guests that come on the show. And everybody, just have a great holiday. And we'll catch you in the December episode. All right. And with that being said, much love. And we'll catch y'all on the next episode of the BoomBastiCAST. Peace.